You're listening to Don't IEP Alone with Special Education Advocate Lisa Lightner. For more information about Lisa, the IEP Toolkit, and more ways we can help you in your process, go to adayinourshoes.com. Now back to the show with your host, Lisa.
Good morning or good afternoon, whenever you're downloading and getting around to listening to this. I'm Lisa Lightner. Welcome to the Don't IEP Alone podcast, my simple little podcast about IEPs. But today, I'm not going to explain anything about IEPs. We're going to talk about something a little bit different because I published an article about this the other day. And I know that I'm known for being able to explain things to parents in terms that they understand. And that's something that I really take pride in. However, I guess as far as this topic goes, I didn't explain it as well as I could in writing. So I'm going to kind of think through it verbally, and then, I don't know, maybe I'll do a YouTube video or something to try to explain it a little bit better too. Because it's really, really important for parents to grasp this concept, especially if your child is going to need services as an adult. And that is, we are going to talk about, or I am going to talk about, the brain shift, the mindset shift, the thought process that you have to embrace when your child is a disabled adult, because the system goes from entitlements to eligibility. And that's a huge shift. And if you don't understand it, you're going to be incredibly frustrated. You're probably going to be incredibly frustrated even if you do understand it, because it's not a fair system. But you're going to be even more frustrated if you don't understand it, because you're going to have unrealistic expectations of what your child is going to get. And in order to advocate effectively, you have to know the system that you're advocating, right? And you can't necessarily advocate for things that you can't have or aren't entitled to, if that makes sense. So when your child is a school-age student, ages 3 to 21 in the American public school system, and I understand some states go up even higher than that. I believe Michigan goes all the way up to 25 or 26. But IDEA says 3 to 21. When your child is determined to be a child with a disability, they are entitled to FAPE, right? Free and appropriate education. Now, people go, oh, well, isn't there an eligibility? Yeah, there is an eligibility process. There are evaluations and all that. But once it is determined that your child is eligible, it becomes an entitlement. Your child is entitled to a special education. The arguments that you have going forward with your school district are just about what FAPE looks like for your child. You're not arguing with your district that is your child entitled to FAPE. The district agrees that your child is entitled to FAPE. You know your child's entitled to FAPE. Where the argument is what does FAPE look like for your child? That's what you're arguing and advocating for. Once you become an adult and you exit the public school system, the entire, I don't even know what to say. It just all shifts to eligibility. Your child is not entitled to anything. Nothing. Disabled adults in America are not entitled to anything. Okay, sit with that for a second. So the first thing that you have to do with your child is work on the eligibility. It might be Medicaid. It might be Social Security. And as far as programming, what it looks like beyond Medicaid and Social Security varies significantly. In Pennsylvania, we have what is known as a waiver. And you apply for a waiver, and there are a couple different kinds, depending on the adult's needs. And you qualify, you become eligible for a waiver. Other states do similar things. As far as I know, most states have some type of waiver for what they call home and community-based services. That should be kind of self-explanatory, right? Home and community-based services. And you apply for and become eligible for some type of waiver to pay for some level of home and community-based services. Most states have a very long wait list, sometimes as long as 10 years. The amount of money available to you varies by state. But again, this becomes an eligibility type program, type of service. And I'm going to use my own son as an example because he is a young man with significant needs, a lot of needs. And we are running into this issue. I'm learning a lot, even though we still have a few more years of school left. But he's going to be eligible for a waiver, right? We know that my son's disabled and he's on the wait list, and he's been on the wait list since he's 16, which is what you can do here. And so at some point he's going to be eligible for these types of waivers. Once you get this money, this waiver money, which essentially funds your child's adult life, at what level it funds it, again, varies from state to state. But then you have this money and you have to say, okay, well now where do I want to spend it? Because getting off that wait list and getting your child that program, or getting your child the waiver and the money, is only half the battle. Then you have to say to yourself, like, okay, well, where am I going to spend this money? What is my child going to do as an adult? And this is where people run into this whole concept of exclusion, because there are very limited day programs out there. There are very limited job programs, job training programs, vocational programs, social programs, whatever you want to call it. No matter what state you go to, we do a terrible job of supporting disabled adults. And the options that you're going to find are going to be very limited. But even if I find a program, and I have found some, and let's say they say, okay, well, we're an adult program, because here's the thing, like my son can't work. He has very poor motor planning. He loves to be around people, but even the most simple or mundane task, he is not really able to do. Like, I've heard of people there's a sheltered workshop near here where they fold up napkins and package it with silverware for to-go items. Of course, it's the standard food, filth, and flowers, which is what we do for disabled adults in America, which is we have you work in food service, we have you doing some kind of cleaning, or we have you doing some fluff job like arranging flowers. But even if you took the most basic job, he can't be a Walmart greeter. He can't fold napkins. He can't. I do know of another person who is taking donated 50-pound bags of beans and breaking them down into 1-pound bags for the food bank and putting them in 1-pound Ziplocs so the food bank recipients can have 1-pound bags of beans instead of 50 pounds. My son cannot do that. So, what I'm looking for him is some type of day program where he can be around people. Even a craft program. He can't do crafts without significant hand over hand. He cannot follow directions like that, complex directions. Cannot read and write. So we're looking at all these different day programs and things that are out there. And you apply, but he has seizures. and they can say, we don't take people with seizures. It's an eligibility-based program. If you have seizures, you are not eligible for this program. If I find another program, let's say that even one that takes seizures, they might say, oh, he has a G-tube. We are not taking adults in this program who have feeding tubes. We don't do it. And they don't have to. They legally do not have to. These programs, whether it's a sheltered workshop, whether it's a vocational training program, whether it's a social program, a day program, a small group living program, these programs can establish their eligibility criteria and they can exclude your child. Because here's the big one. Behaviors. They can exclude, and they often do exclude, disabled adults who have behaviors. And that's where a lot of programs or a lot of parents get really frustrated, because otherwise, if their kid is having a good day, they can do all these other things. They can do the day program. They can do a job of some kind. They can fold laundry in a hospital laundry facility. But if something happens and there are behaviors, this program is not required. They're just not required to have your child. I don't know how else to say it. You're not entitled to anything. You become eligible. Or, as is more common the case, ineligible. So I lecture parents, I wag my finger, I'm browbeating parents all the time that if your child has significant needs and you know that the traditional path of college or a job, community college, a tech school, a trade school, if you know that that is not their path, that you know their path is going to be something like a day program of some kind, a community-based program, you are very likely, first of all, you have to take ownership of this process. If you wait for the school to do it, they're not going to do it. They don't have to. They're not going to. You have to do it, and you likely have to create it. So, for example, I found in my travels, somebody introduced me and they said, you got to meet this guy in Kennett. You got to meet him. And his daughter has high needs and she has seizures and she has a feed tube. And so he couldn't find anything for her, so he created it. And so I met up with him and I saw what he did. And yes, I'm going to, somewhat mimic what he's doing for his daughter for my child. You're going to have to create it. Chances are, if your child has a lot of needs, and if they have anything quirky about them, whether it's seizures, feeding tube, behaviors, the programs will not, they're just not going to be eligible. They're just not required to take you. You can advocate for it, but I don't know, I don't know. Behaviorists for adults with autism and all that are very few and far between. So I don't know what you're going to find out there. So anyway, just think about that mindset shift. I know that I said I was going to work on shorter podcasts these days, so I am going to end this here. But remember, when your child is an adult, they're not entitled to anything. They move to eligibility. More information in the footnotes of the podcast. And as always, you can go to village.adayinourshoes.com if you want to post a question, comment, concern, or just interact with others. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to Don't IEP Alone with Special Education Advocate Lisa Lightner. We're so glad you've joined us and would love to connect with you outside of the show. For more information about Lisa, the IEP Toolkit, and more ways we can help you in your process, go to adayinourshoes.com. From self-care tips to common IEP mistakes, there's even more to explore. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast and subscribe to never miss an episode. Until next time, don't IEP alone, and you don't have to.